Good morning. If I can get the Powell and Peak conversation down to a whisper, I'm good to go. Y'all pray with me. Gracious Heavenly Father, again we come asking you to forgive us of our sins, to say thank you for another wonderful day in your kingdom, to ask that you be with those on the south side who are trying to get here. Lead, guide, and direct us. Let us do things that please you. Give us wisdom. Give us compassion. I ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. Do y'all all know that all the bills will not make it to the floor? Do we know that? So as you get mad, please direct your madness towards me, not others in this building. And I'll direct mine back at you. Mr. Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. I have two bills for you this morning. One is House Bill 381 on page 1 of your under modified open rule. That's House Bill 381. This is the Insomniac's Dream Bill dealing with the revised Georgia law on notarial acts. I commend it to you for good sleep. On page 2 at the very top is House Resolution 502. This is a constitutional amendment that would provide for the dedication of revenues from taxes and fees for their intended purposes. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
No questions, thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have a proposition, House Bill 684. It's the middle of the second page under the modified structured section. This bill would enable dental hygienists to work under the authorization of dentists in general settings to bring more dental hygiene, oral health care to those that are most in need in Georgia.
Mr. Dixon. Mr. Rice.
Yeah, to the author.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Martin, I was just wondering, in the past, we have rejected many bills like this, which are extension of services type of thing to other groups. They haven't made it to the floor for a vote. Is there agreement between the hygienist and the dental association that this bill is ready?
Yes, sir. We had an agreement from the gentleman that's the executive director of the Georgia Dental Association. And to be clear, Chairman Rice, this does not expand the scope at all for the dental hygiene community. They can only do things that they are currently authorized to do under board rules and regs and state statute. This just allows them to do it under rules and regs if authorized by a licensed dentist in a general setting. So this is not a scope extension, to be clear. It is also 100% enabling, and we have 100% agreement from the Dental Association.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Does the dental board, can they allow that now?
I'm sorry?
Can the dental board allow that, what you're asking for in this bill now?
In the dental board, through rules and regs, allow this in some settings. This expand the settings, but this is allowed in Georgia in 2 settings now. Yes, sir.
Ms. Cooper. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it not true that for this is the same as sort of we do for nurse practitioners and PAs who are allowed to prescribe medicines which could be life-threatening, whereas this is just to allow the dentist, if the dentist wants to allow his dental hygienist to participate, to be able to clean teeth for our most needy citizens?
Yes, ma'am. This is, if the dentist authorizes, they would be able to do the limited scope and clean teeth under the authorization of a dentist in safety net settings.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. House.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you this morning House Bill 773. This is known as the Georgia Dream Bill. The state of Georgia has no financial obligation to this. It's the federal government underwrites this program, and it's to raise the bond limit from up to $3 billion. Since 1976, 44,000 loans have been made to teachers, nurses, and other professionals in Georgia with this loan. Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I have two bills for you today. First one is HB 897 on page 2 at the very bottom of the page. This bill establishes a drug repository program. There was a bill some years ago that didn't really go anywhere. I mean, it passed. It just didn't happen. It wasn't established. This time it puts it under the Department of Public Health, and hopefully that will be more effective in that way.
No questions on that. What's the other?
The second bill is at the bottom of the page 3 under structured rule. It's HB 939. HB 939. This is a cleanup bill of HB 1000 from 2014 regarding tax intercept refunds that allows the AOC, Administrative Office of the Courts, to transfer the intercepted tax refund to the court to which the debt is owed.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lumsden.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 970. It is on modified open rule, page 1, second from the bottom. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, a bill that comes to us at the request of the Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council. The operation of the Standards and Training Council is governed by state law, and that law requires all firefighters and support positions to undergo a background check as part of the hiring process. Due to changes at the federal level, the FBI will no longer perform the background checks on the support positions. The GBI is the state agency that processes requests for background checks. They have worked with the FBI and have proposed language changes to our Georgia law that will resolve this issue. House Bill 970 is a result of those conversations and will resolve this problem. Be glad to answer any questions.
No questions. Thank you. Ms. Gilligan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the third time that I'm bringing House Bill 944. It's on the first page near the bottom.
You're a freshman. Don't remind me how many times you have to come up here.
I only said that because I thought you didn't want to see me after the third time. But
Sometimes I make exceptions.
yes, sir. Well, currently in Georgia, RNs can pronounce death except in the event that the person was an organ donor, and this bill will allow them to do that regardless of their organ donor status.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And you don't have to come back.
Pardon?
You don't have to come back.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Buckner.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm here about House Resolution 978. It's on page 2. It is third from the top in modified open. This is a study committee to check on our historic sites. The origin of this bill is that there were 3 of us as state reps that were talking in the ante room, so business does occur there occasionally. And what we found is that there was a building that was being offered up to be donated to the state, but the state did not feel that they could accept this historic structure without an endowment because the state funds to the budget were not enough to cover the upkeep. In the conversation, we also talked about how a number of our state historic sites have very limited hours of operation, and we also talked about the fact that there are some of our historic sites that people are saying are not as well kept as they would like to see them. The purpose of the study committee is to kind of assess our state historic sites and try to look at what other states are doing to increase the budget for those historic sites in their state and see if we can make recommendations to the department. The department is fully in favor of this study committee.
That's the most amount I've ever heard for a resolution.
I'm sorry. It's rather important to parts of our state.
Just to remind everybody, unless it's a constitutional amendment resolution or a resolution with property, it's after day 30. It's okay. We can do those after day 30. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Scott.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have House Bill 913, and it is asking for a female Veterans Coordinator position for the Department of Veterans Affairs. It is on the first page, fourth from the bottom.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 806, Modified Structure Rule, page 2, fifth one up.
Wait a second.
I'm sorry.
It's a 2-pie session, not a 1-pie session.
Yes, sir. You ready?
You're on.
All right, House Bill 806 on page 2. This legislation would do away with the 5-year driver's license renewal. All license now would be for 8 years. This will help DDS with lines, wait times, etc. Should also hopefully will result in a savings to the state. The most important thing personally that this does to me is it puts a statute of limitations on driver's license suspensions. Currently in the state, there are cities that are sending traffic citations in up to 10 years after they were adjudicated, which are resulting in driver's license suspensions of someone who got the ticket actually 10 years prior. This states that if it's after 2 years, it will not result in a suspension of driver's license.
Ms. Smith.
Good morning, sir.
You just letting me know you're here?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. Thank you for your bill here. I think it's a good idea. I just have a question about senior citizens. Is there an age limit? If you hit like 80, do you get it for 8 more years, or how does that work?
Wait a second.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. I'm knocking on that door too, so you know.
Some of us have opened it and walked right through. What is the age limit? Listen to this, Wendell, Richard, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, we're not discriminating against age in this legislation.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Y'all, when you get a certain age, you're going to get that eye test. You can't read it with one set of glasses and you can't drive with the other. Amazing.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Even though I have long walked through that door, I do have a question. Since Georgia has one of the most lenient eye tests, and which would be considered legally blind in most states, we let people drive. I am concerned about the fact that an older person could go 8 years and have a significant decrease in their ability to see. Could some consideration maybe be given to that fact?
Well, we did talk to the optometrist during this legislation process through committee. They did not testify and did not object to the legislation. It does still require that the eye test be given, but it would allow for a renewal up to 8 years.
I'm going to get one more and probably never get another one. Mr. Ramsey? Have we got a button pushed up?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just had a question.
Pro tem.
Is it currently 5 and 10 years?
5 and 8.
It's currently 5 and 8. We're just doing away with it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Isn't it true that on the eye test, the optometrists in the previous times have looked at the ability to view on the side? It's not a frontal view issue, and there was a question about that. That's the only leniency in the law.
That's correct. In previous legislation, we've had that come up, and we've satisfied the optometrist's concerns with that.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
If y'all have got one, holler. All right, mash your button. Mr. Willard.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. On the third page, under the modified structured rule, the last item, which is House Resolution 1363. This is the second shoe of the issues that we have addressing the State Judicial Qualification Commission. This is the bill that our resolution I addressed the committee on last week, which is to have the Speaker of the House establish a special study committee to be given subpoena powers, which would always be signed by the Speaker, for people as well as documents to be brought before this committee as we proceed with investigating the numerous matters that have been brought to at least my attention regarding matters of conduct and propriety as far as the way of handling these matters by the Commission. I might say in closing that what I'm discovering is that the Commission provides less protection and due process to judges than we're giving accused criminals in our state, and this is just something that needs to be looked into. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
No questions. Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Structured rule, House Bill 923. This has to do with a local fire district in Jackson County that was created by the General Assembly, and it's the only one in the state, and they really need the authority to, or they would really like to have the be able to buy equipment and stuff with no tax.
No questions. Thank you, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 900. This is the update to the prescription monitoring program in our state, since opiate deaths are skyrocketing here in Georgia and across the country. This would make the monitoring system more useful for physicians and pharmacists in trying to help people and prevent, their addiction. Thank you.
Mr. A. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to bring two bills this morning, HB 948 being the first one. This deals with the Interstate Compact Commission. It raises the application from $25 to $100. These are the inmates who are transferred in and out of Georgia to their states. There's currently several hundred that are retaken every year because of a parole or a probation violation. The $25 is severely short of anywhere near covering the cost of transporting these inmates back and forth. And it would be a good opportunity to help save the taxpayers a little bit. Second bill, if there's no questions, second bill is House Bill 949, also on the third page under modified structure. This deals with the P-card legislation. Last year it was an awful popular piece of legislation. It set forth parameters to the local governments that they had to set a policy into place. It basically said that you cannot, that an elected official or a county employee or a city employee, local employees, that they can't use P-cards or credit cards for financial gain or financial purposes, such as what we've been hearing for years of putting vacations and travel and such like that on a government credit card, something that resonated across all elected lines. Because of a shortfall last year, the constitutional officers did not want to sign an agreement with the boards of commissioners, and the constitutional officers, led by the Sheriff's Association, came forward, and what we've decided is that if they didn't want to deal with the county commission, if they're doing their own purchases, then those elected officials have to adopt the very same policy and let their employees know that you cannot use a county credit card or P card for personal purchases. That's got to be strictly for governmental purposes.
Good bill. Ms. Ballinger.
Mr. Chairman, I come today to ask for HB 905, which is second from the top on the third page. It's brought on behalf of PAC, DFACS, and the Office of the Child Advocate here in Georgia. It adds 3 offenses to mandated reporters: third-degree cruelty, DUI with children in the car, and manufacturing methamphetamine in the presence of a child. It also preserves the constitutionality of the Child Abuse Registry maintained by DFACS, and it also resolves there was an age discrepancy within the mandated reporting statute. One was 3 years, one was 5, and we've changed that to 4 across the board. And we also incorporated HB 845, the safe harbor provision.
No questions. Mr. Golick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under modified structure, 2 bills. House Bill 849 is the Georgia Civil Rights and Public Accommodations Act. There's no controversy attached to that bill. I'm sorry. There is a sub ready if and when the committee is ready, to Mr. Earhart's question just now. House Bill 941 has to do with grand jury process when there's an allegation of police criminal behavior, including the use of deadly force. And it's supported by law enforcement.
The question would then become to Mr. Earhart. There was going to be an amendment that. Okay, it won't be on. Okay. Ms. Dempsey, where are you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put my name by on page 2, 2/3 of the way down, House Bill 773, Chairman Houston's bill.
Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 856 on page 1 under modified open, House Bill 856. Mr. Chairman, this is the bill requested by our probate courts, which ups their bond requirement from $25,000 to $100,000. This is where citizens have a ability to recover lost monies, and the probate judge should some employee misappropriate funds.
Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to begin the discussion on House Bill 929. This is the nonpartisan National Popular Vote Act. It's a compact. It's very nonpartisan. If you'll notice, the first 2 signers are myself and the Minority Leader Abrams on this particular piece of legislation. Over 80 other of our colleagues have signed on to this legislation. It allows the state legislature to actually take their constitutional duty to, as in a quote from Article 2, Section 1 in the Constitution, in any manner set the vote for the Electoral College. It's straight out of the Constitution. This particular legislation clearly takes the sovereignty of the individual's vote over the sovereignty of the state, and it takes Georgia finally from a spectator state in these national elections into a player.
I didn't know that bill would cause so many phone calls.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't either.
Both ways. It's not one way or the other. It's just both
I have
ways.
actually refrained. I've told our folks, do not use those one-button push, generate 2,000 email things. Hopefully they're not doing too much of that. I've asked them not to. This is an issue that should and could be debated on its merits without the hyperbole.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask under modified structure on the second page, HB 827, Representative Holcomb's bill to help clean up the backlog on rape kits in the state of Georgia. On the first page, HB 804 by Representative Ronnie Mabra under modified open. The funds for this judgeship were included in the budget that we passed on Friday, and this would create a fifth judgeship in Clayton County. And in solidarity with my friend, Mr. Chairman Earhart, would like to ask for HB 929.
Ms. Hughley. You got.
President campaign across the
Ms. Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 497 by Representative Stovall regarding the surplus property charitable organizations. House Bill 542 for the Higher Education Savings Plan by Representative Wilkerson, and HB 913, the Veterans Service Department providing for a woman Veterans Program Coordinator.
What was the last one, Ms. Hughes?
HB 913 by Representative Scott.
Mr. Willard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for, on behalf of my friend Mr. Atwood, House Bill 851 under modified open, about 2/3 of the way down. This is a bill dealing with the local funds that go into the library funds with the filing fees, and it needs to be cleaned up, and I appreciate your support.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for SB 93, dealing with purging data from the license plate trackers from law enforcement. Also HB 171 from Representative Hightower, American Law for American Court. Bill that's been worked on for some years now, and I think has a solid resolution in the Judiciary Committee. And lastly, I'd like to make a motion to limit debate on Representative Earhart's bill to 8 hours.
If y'all hadn't picked up on it anytime soon, Mr. Earhart isn't having much time as he wants. Ms. Cooper?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to put my name by House Bill 944 on the first page. That would allow nurse practitioners and PAs and RNs to pronounce death in hospices and nursing homes. I would also like to put it by 897. That is the bill, it's on the last one on the second page, which would allow us to set up a system to use untampered with drugs that normally would just be disposed of. And last but not least, House Bill 54. It seems to be more and more police officers are being killed in the line of duty through just making routine traffic stops, and with their pay scale, it seems like we could do something to help their children finish school.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question for Chairman Earhart, if I could, on his bill.
Sure.
Since electoral college is created by the Constitution, and any changes that have been made to the electoral college were amendments, would there not have to be an amendment to do what you're wanting to do?
Mr. Chairman, if I can respond, the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, has the exact statement. It says that the legislative branches in all 50 states may enter either into a compact or in any manner whatsoever. Actually, the Constitution spends more specificity with respect to the legislative capacity in this area than in any other place. They took 20 votes over 22 days at the Constitutional Convention in 1700s with respect to this issue. It does not require an amendment to the United States Constitution. As a matter of fact, there's 2 states that have changed just in recent years by the apportionment through the congressional district rather than in the current electoral college model. So there's plenty of precedent as well, but the Constitution is clear.
All right, thank you,
sir. Thanks for the question.
Mr. T. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I'm sitting next to him, I'd like to put my name by HB 948 and also HB 949, Chairman Powell's bills.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 916. This is a bill that is dealing with Department of Community Health, and they are dinging some of our agencies that are back in the communities for clerical errors, unintentional, type errors, and quite frankly, it's going to cost our communities a lot of money where they fulfill their duties and their missions just because of clerical errors.
Okay. All right, we're setting the calendar for Tuesday, which will be the 26th day. Under open rule, HB 1030. Do I hear a motion? Any opposed? It's on. Under modified open, HB 804.
804.
804. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified open, HB 851. Any opposed? Modified open, HB 856. Any opposed? Modified open, HB 944. See, I told you she didn't have to come back. Any opposed? It's on. Modified open, HB 970. Any opposed? Modified open, HB 975. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified structure, HB 93. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified structure, okay. Back to HB 93. If y'all remember, about a week ago, we approved an amendment on that thing from 90 days to a year. But it's on. Under modified structure, HB 792. Buzz wants to buzz you. Any opposed? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, same sign. It's on. Under modified structure, HB 827. Any opposed? Under modified structure, HB 900. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified structure, HB 941. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified structure, HR 1312. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified structure, HR 1363. Any opposed? It's on. Under structured, HB 768. Any opposed? It's on. Under structured, HB 923. Any opposed? It's on. That's enough.
Hey, Earl.